Phase 1, Episode 3, a Riche Stitch point of view. In Episode 3 is what goes into a tech pack and why it matters to manufacturers. Every collection has a story, but most only see the final product. This is In the Making, Season 26. One collection, two perspectives, every detail. Behind every beautiful collection is a document that rarely ever gets seen, but that document is what makes everything possible. It's called a tech pack. To a manufacturer, it's the most important file we'll receive in the process.
So we just received our first tech pack from Nouveau Riche Apparel. So let's open it up. We're going to examine the tech pack and let's see what we need to do.
When a designer sends us a tech pack, it becomes our guide. We review it line by line and we look for clarity. We also look for accuracy and alignment with their vision. We check every sketch, every stitch note, every fabric call out, and every single measurement, because this is what ensures that we build what the designer intended and not just what we think they meant.
So right off the bat, they have their header, so it has a lot of the information that we need. Now, they don't have a style number yet, but I see it's a development sample, so that's perfectly okay if there is no style number. This is for their basics collection. It's a rib knit fabric, so this will be a pretty easy style to do. Looks like we will be sourcing the fabric for them because there's no supplier listed here, so we'll go ahead and take care of that before we create the sample. We will also send them swatches of the fabric so they can determine if that is what they're looking for or if we need to source a different fabric. They have care instructions on here, but usually you add that in after we source the fabric because it would depend on the fiber content, but that's okay because it may work. Nouveau Riche Apparel has been doing this for a while, so they more than likely know what the care instructions would be for a garment of this type. Then you will go onto the construction page, which this doesn't have anything on there, and that is perfectly okay because we would be the ones doing the sourcing for them. So since we haven't sourced the fabric yet, we would add the fabric in here once we actually source it. Then next, going into the BOM. They filled out most of this information because it's really just the one material for their basic dress. Then of course you had the threads and then all their packaging. They put this last column as TBD because that is the country of origin for the materials that we at Riche Stitch need to source. So once we source it, we would add this information in for them. Then they have the colorway page, which they haven't filled it out yet. Normally there will be all the colors on here, the Pantone numbers, and then the actual Pantone number or what color it needs to be for the different components of the garment, which this one has a tie, but it wasn't a tie front, so that probably should just say tie. Then threads, I should highlight that to let them know that I made a change there. Okay, so that's a change I made. But back to the colorways. They most likely didn't add in colors yet because we have to source the fabric. So depending on what colors the fabric comes in, then they can decide which colors they want. Then we have their specs, which normally you will have all the specs filled in. They only have few. It's like some of the basic specs. So there's the length, I see waist, there's chest, and there's hip. So maybe they want for us to figure out the other specs for them so we can fill these in. But to be safe, instead of just assuming that we're filling in the rest of their measurements for them, that's something I'll add on my list to bring up before we actually produce it, if they want to create their own specs or if we would create the specs for them. And then normally over here, this will call out the different numbers on the sketches of where that measurement is because everyone measures a little differently. So they have it in there to insert the sketches, but they haven't done it yet. So that's one thing that I'm going to point out is the measurements. And this would be the same thing. It's their grading page. They only put in some of the specs, but they didn't put all, and they haven't done the grading yet, which is pretty normal when it comes to a development sample because you're getting that first sample first, see how you like the actual development before you actually go into the rest of the details. If it's something that proceeds beyond development sample, that's when you can go in and add the rest of the information. But one of the things they will have to do is this says extra small through 6XL, but they only have columns up to XL, so they will have to add in the rest of the sizes here, but that can be done later. Then the grading check, this is for them to check to make sure we match their requested specs, which We either need to enter it for them or they enter them themselves. Label placement. They haven't filled out the label placement yet. There's nothing here, although there's some instructions there. So that's probably like their standard placement. But we would look for the artwork for the packaging to make sure we're using the right packaging. So that's not in here. So again, this is something I would add a note on to call out. It's not necessary for development samples because normally development samples do not come with packaging on it. But if it's something you want to see on your sample, you want to make sure to include it in the tech pack. Then this page is blank, which is the folding process. This page honestly isn't necessary. They don't need to tell us how to fold it. We make sure to fold it flat and make sure it's wrinkle free as possible. But if they want to include those instructions in here, they'll need to add that in. And this is their sample tracker. So once we source the materials, we will send the material to them for approval. They can add in the additional information they want to add in. For example, the colorways. Now that they know the fabric, they can add it in. If they want to add in the rest of their specs, they can add it in at that time. Once this is finalized with the tech pack complete, then we go into producing the sample.
Now, what is it that we look for in a tech pack? There are certain non-negotiables that we must have in a tech pack. First, we look for those flat sketches and preferably multiple angles, so front, back, of course any sides if there are any special details on the side that we need to see. We look for precise measurements, but when we look at those measurements, we also review it with a technical designer to make sure those measurements make sense. If they don't make sense, we will open up that conversation with you to adjust those measurements if needed, because we want to make sure when it's designed and we actually produce it that it actually fits and is functional. There are times where there may be measurements created where, let's say, an inseam doesn't match the outseam. Now, it could be the designer's creative process, which is why we open up a conversation and we don't assume, but we want to make sure it makes sense and that it is going to fit. We also make sure there's fabric and trims included. Some designers may send us their tech packs and the fabric and trims section is blank because they want our help to source the fabrics first and then add that in later, and that's perfectly okay. But before we go into the process, that must be added into the tech pack. We look for stitch and construction notes because this is what guides us on how to actually create it. Again, from a designer standpoint, you may not know what to put in that section, and that is okay because that's where us as the manufacturers will come help fill in those gaps. But if there are any specific stitching or construction that you need to call out that's specific for your vision to truly make it come to life how you see it, be sure to call that out.
When we first receive a tech pack, we look for a few key components. One being the sketches, which they do have on here. There's no call outs on here. They could have made call outs to maybe something on the side here because there is a detail here, maybe some details in here they could have called out, but for the most part we can see what their design is. There is a front and back. That's something we can also question on the call before we proceed. We look for the measurements. There's partial measurements here, which is something I've already noted to call out to see if that's something we need to finish or if they will be finishing, but that's something we look for. If this came to us blank with no measurements, that's something we would definitely discuss to see what type of fit they're looking for before we just assume the measurements. Next, we look for the type of fabric, which they called out rib knit, so they gave us an idea of the fabric they want. They didn't source it themselves, but at least we know what we are sourcing. If there was no fabric here, that's something we would also question to see what type of fabric you are hoping for. Even if you don't know the exact fabric, we still need an idea of like the weight type, the category, is it going to be a woven or knit, those type of questions, so that way we know what we are sourcing. And then the last thing I've already mentioned along with the sketches is the call outs. We look for those call outs for the extra notes. If there's none, we'll go with what we see or we will question it on the call.
And then your branding placement. If we're doing any branding for you, that's hang tags, garment labels, any type of stickers or anything like that, any graphics that are being printed on the design, we want to make sure those are mentioned in your tech pack as well. If you are doing graphics, we want to make sure that we have the artwork needed for your graphics also. If any of these components are missing, we pause, because without these components, it becomes a guessing game for us. Not every designer comes to us with the tech pack that's ready, and that's completely okay. At Riche Stitch, we do offer full tech pack services. So you can come to us with just a sketch or simply just a vision, and we'll create the tech pack with the sketches for you. And nothing will move forward until you have the opportunity to review and approve the tech pack that we create for you. A good tech pack prevents confusion, corrections, and costly mistakes. For us, it means that we get to move efficiently. For the designer, it means a peace of mind that what they imagine is exactly what we're producing.
But since this tech pack is not complete and I do have questions on it, this is when I would reach out to the designer, set up a time to go through some of the questions that I have. Since this is a basic design, I don't really have too many technical questions aside from the specs, but I will review all of that before I jump into the sourcing and then the sampling steps.
Once the tech pack is completed and approved, we move to the sample development. This is where the sketch becomes a silhouette and vision turns into reality. Whether you come to us with a completed tech pack or a spark of an idea, we're here to guide your collection from vision to garment. Subscribe to Riche Stitch to see what happens next as we make season 26 come to life.